It's already so. Yes, good morning, everyone. I welcome you all for today's guest lecture from Archilogics series 2021-22 on behalf of MES Pillai College of Architecture. It's my immense pleasure to share with you all that today we have architect Vinita Kaur Chiragia, co-founder Design Jatra firm, as a guest lecturer. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. Today she'll be sharing with us. Today she'll be sharing with us her journey and experiences, envisioning all of us about her context-sensitive design approach. So, not wasting much time, I will request Professor Jasmine Bhavsar ma'am to introduce our guest lecturer, Architect Vinita, and her work and her firm's work to you all in brief. Over to you, Jasmine ma'am.
Thank you, Vrinda ma'am. A very warm welcome to Architect Vinita Kaur Chiragia. A brief introduction to her firm. Design Jatra began in 2013. It's an architectural firm that is lying to build a healthy dialogue between the urban and the rural scenario, where both are facing various challenges at their own levels. This firm is located near the village named Vete Murbad. Its initiative aims at integrating rural communities and help them sustain using their own technologies, skills, and materials. There are three co-founders of Design Jatra. One of them is Pratik Damner, native of village Vete Murbad. He is involved in various rural policies and Gram Sabhas. He is also into conservation of the seats as an integral part of the architectural firm associated with Borivali, Mumbai. He also teaches kids in his village and he has a keen interest in sketching, theatre, and drama. Another co-founder is architect Shadul Patil. He is an environmental activist. He is also his ideology is having a democratic approach towards design and environmentalism. He works and experiments with natural materials and technologies, and he is an integral part of Save RA movement. And now coming to our today's guest lecturer, architect Vinita. She is a very keen observer, a very good eye of her detailing. She is a very punches co-founder of Design Jatra. With her vision of detailing, she brings in the culmination of arts and crafts along with architecture. She is majorly involved in Toker initiative of Design Jatra. She believes in culminating the utilitarian and contemporary products with traditional skills and native biodiversity. She is having a keen interest in fabric design and natural dyeing. Vinita, I hand over the mic to you and kindly start your guest lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Vrinda and Jasmine, ma'am. So I would like to begin the lecture. So I'll just share my screen. Is the screen visible to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I'll start. So this is the first slide that I'm sharing, and we would like what we see in this slide is a stark contrast. On the left-hand side, we see a current scenario where the person has to wear an astronaut suit in order to survive the surroundings that we have created for ourselves. So things are named as green buildings, but it ends up polluting the environment. It ends up degrading the ecology, and we are also struggling with the air pollution now. On the right-hand side is something which was there in the past with us, which we did not value maybe. It still exists in some of the rural parts of many countries throughout the world, wherein you don't need to have an astronaut suit on top of you. You are good enough to survive with the environment, you being a part of nature, not against nature.
Vinita ma'am, can you make the presentation full screen?
I will do that.
Thank you.
Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Has it become full screen?
Yes, ma'am. It has become full screen. Thank you.
I would like to now give you a rough idea of where exactly we are based and where we work. So down here is Mumbai, as you can see. And on the top side left-hand corner is Dahan. This is where we are based. So basically our office is located in a small tribal Warli village and we operate from there. So it is a base where we do a lot of community work with the Warli tribe of this one particular village. Pratik, which was introduced by Jasmine just now, stays in the same village. And myself and Shardul have our core in Bombay, but most of our works happen on site. So either we work from home or we work from Dahanu or we are on a different sites. This looks like a very ordinary picture, but it has a story to tell. So when we talk of traditional architecture, every place has a different story to tell. These days, we have lost our identities, whether it is in Bombay or in Paris or in any other, in Dubai, for example. All the buildings look very similar. They have lost their identity. They do not relate to the climate, to the culture, or to the people living there. So in this picture, what we see is a sloping roof, four-sided sloping roof, Mangalore tiled house. From this, what we come to know is its relation to the climate. Like we understand that it must be receiving a very high rainfall because of which the water needs to be, drained off. Hence the sloping roof. Sloping roof on all four sides means the rainfall is not, scanty, it is heavy. If you look at the walls over here, they are made up of some reed kind of thing, something, which is very thin and it is coated with mud-like things. So basically the walls are not very thick, they're very thin and they're very, easy to breathe. So you can analyze saying the climate of this place must be very hot and humid because of which such a breathiness is required. If you look at the surroundings now, so there is, hay kept in the foreground, the front veranda of the house, which indicates that the house must be having cattle to feed because that is the reason they store hay. So there are reasons, in every picture, you get to see certain things which we as architects need to learn to analyze. What is the story behind it? Because everything which is kept over there relates to something which we need to decode. This is another slide that we documented. So this is a village wherein the whole village was around this small pond. And how the whole ecological system of the village worked in sync with the pond is something very interesting. So all the houses use the water from the pond for their daily requirements. All the cattle also fed from, drank water from the pond. The mud from the base of the pond was used to plaster the houses. During the rains used to take away all the muds and wash it off into the pond again, completing the whole cycle. So what we see over here is so beautiful that you're not disturbing anything. It's like a circular system wherein you take things from a natural, you take a natural resource and automatically, without degrading it or without wasting it, it just goes back into the same process. So you're not generating waste. This is our inspiration, so to say. So we started our work in a tribal village, and the reason why we got interested in this was this image which these Warli tribes called ghar. So when we say ghar, for us, when I used to say ghar, it used to be the four external walls of my house. Not my building, not my surrounding. It was just my house, the external four walls of my house. The minute I entered into a tribal village and looked at this painting, which they called ghar, ghar was, if you see proportionately in the whole picture, it's just a very small, maybe just 10% of the whole picture. It's at the right-hand side bottom corner. This is the ghar, along with the people who are, farming. They're threshing the rice. There is a lot of rice kept around the house. There are fishes. There is water body. There are clouds. There is rain. There is trees. There is forest. There are people farming. There are birds. So it is like this whole ecosystem, which they call ghar, which is very interesting and progressive. in itself has a point of view, which we as architects should be learning from. So I don't see tribals as somebody who's backward or poor. We see them as somebody who's way progressive than us and way more thoughtful than anyone of us right now is. So I'll share the first project. So we have a set of 5 projects over here to share with you. After every project, I'll take a 5 minutes break wherein we can have a question answer session. Every project relates more or less to the process, to the context, and different aspects. Some are more or less they're related to communities so that you can get something for your own project. So I'll begin the first project. So this is a residential project, which was our first project in a small village. We were like architects based in Bombay. We had no idea what a village looks like, how it functions. And we just went there to make, Shardul's house in the village. So this was so in this image, when we entered the village, this was one of the houses which we saw was quite impactful to us because it had, materials like bricks in there. There was hay, there was bamboo, there was wood, there was mangrove tiles, there were carvey. So it was like a collage of many materials put together. And it's not just the natural materials which, intrigued us. It was how the house allowed the flexibility, like it allowed you to grow further. So the minute they say, okay, this is our core house, which was made in brick, and then they decided, okay, now I have the funds to extend it on one more side. So let's do it now. So the left-hand side veranda extended then the front veranda came later on when more funds were accumulated. So it gave the flexibility, which we do not provide to the clients today, or we lack to see these days. Then we went around a few more houses to see what kind of architecture was practiced around. And it was majorly like, it was this brick, these brick structures with mud mortar in them, with a wooden loft kind of thing with bamboos woven as floors, bamboos and wood used for the roof, mangrove tiles on top. So it was this very typical so-called, the small kid draws a picture of a rural village. That kind of house we saw here. And then we saw this interesting door wherein the shutter was woven with carvey reeds and it had just, a wooden frame. So like our concepts of the door should be, very, it should be sturdy enough. It should give you privacy. All of those things just got shattered the minute we saw this door because it was just giving a mere curtain-like feel wherein, okay, this is more like a divider, not a door. This image might look very, very much close to nothing, but it is representing a very important thing, the mode of communication. We as architects within ourselves learn in these 5 years how to draw on, papers and on laptops and on softwares. But these rural masons that you see on the right-hand side just drew on the ground. We went there with our plans and sections and these big scrolls. And these people just drew on the ground and we were wondering what exactly are they sketching. So that was the first time where we related to the different mode of communication which is needed in a particular context. You cannot go to a rural context and expect them to know the language of the urban context. This is a slide which I would want to describe. So almost in the center, the red brick house is where our mason used to stay. There is another house on top where another wood mason used to stay. There's a brick which is shown. So basically it's like a map wherein the site is in this dotted white thing, in this black dotted line. The trees on the site were shown. All the green hatched, single lines are the fields around. The road is marked. And all the resources which are there around, right from the water body to the stream moving right next to the site, till the mountains around, till the foliages, and to all the resources that we wanted to build a house with. So this is a resource mapping kind of exercise that we did, wherein we knew where we are going to get the stones from, where our bricks are located, where our masons are located, where our wood is located, and etc. And for this project, our site was getting developed. Our house was getting built simultaneously with the model. So we realized in the initial recce visits that drawings are not something which is going to work for this project. So we started building a model wherein the Mistris or the masons used to look at the model and build accordingly. That's the model, which is like an in-process model, which never got over, by the way. That's a very important part that we as architects miss today. So in our 5-year journey, it is extremely crucial for all of us to, get down on the ground to work with the people who are working to build that structure that you have designed. It is very important for us to be there with them to learn things first before we teaching them what needs to be done. So this was the progress that we made initially. That's the interior. That's the completed house. These are a few more images after it, it got lived in for a few years. Now this house has a water body behind wherein fishes are also bred. This is either for consumption or just for recreation. So this water body helps climatologically to help the microclimate, help the house getting cooled. The brick jallis that you see on top throughout the project actually. So these brick jallis, they help in, cooling the air, and the cool air comes inside. The hot air at the above level just, goes out from there. And also the direction in which these jallis were placed was such that the sun doesn't come inside. So basically the heat and the light is something which gets obstructed while you get the breeze. So you need to design all these things very critically. And in the initial few years, like after we built the house, the next step was to start farming. So farming was something that we did on a regular, on an annual basis. Now this region that we work in is, based with a lot of rice farmers. So we do a lot of rice cultivation ourselves. And that's the three of us, myself, Shardul, and an intern working on his rice field. What interestingly we did in the upcoming years is we planted certain trees species on this farm itself. Now these tree species are not any random tree species. We used, different varieties, almost 12 to 13 local species of timber in making the house. And these were exactly the species that we planted onto the farm to give back to nature what we consume. So that's a part of the rice farming. Okay, so this was the first project wherein we wanted to show what kind of context we went in with a certain kind of background and what we evolved out of it. So if you see, this final house was more like an answer to all the questions which the rural people told us, this is something that you cannot do. So when they told us ki tumhala maticha bangla bandhayacha, you want to build a mud house, you will not be able to do it. It will get washed away. We built it. We started building it. Then they said a balcony is not possible in a mud construction. We built it. We failed. We tried again. We built it. They said arches is a long lost skill. You won't be able to make arches successfully. We collapsed 2 arches, but we learned and we built it. So it was more like an answer to the questions that people stopped, caring about. And these small things later gave rise to a lot of confidence in the people around who came and saw this house as something which is achievable. It's not something which is a dream, not, something that cannot be achieved. It's very much achievable. And more people are turning towards this now locally. So I'll take a break now. I would like to, get some questions if you have any before I proceed.
Students, if you have anything to ask, please go ahead. Your doubts or your questions, please go ahead and ask. I'd also request faculties if you have anything to discuss or anything to ask.
Do I move on to the next one then?
Yeah, I guess they would take some time to maybe grasp the
Absorb it.
things.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So they'll come up. You can maybe proceed.
I'll start with the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the next project. Now we'll start with these very simple sketches wherein we started analyzing what we were taught in college, what we were doing, what we were supposed to do, what we were expected to do. And what I'm sharing right now is something that we were expected to do without showing us the whole picture. So in this picture, it's a very simple sketch which shows that how we take natural resources, how we, use the industries or factories to kind of make products out of them. And then we make houses or structures out of those products. And we are happy. That's exactly where the college says ki this is the end of your project. Congratulations. But what they do not teach us, or the world doesn't want to show us, is when this house dilapidates, when it deteriorates, what happens to all of that went inside it. So the roofing sheet, which is say asbestos or any material which is non-biodegradable, it just goes back to nature and stays there, just the way plastic. So there are many construction materials which are contributing to almost 38% of the overall pollution in, globally. And there are these materials which we never think of before we use them. So what happens to the brick, or what happens to the cement that goes in the soil or in the debris or in the landfills? We need to be sensitive as architects to think of what we are using, how it is going to end up. It cannot just be कि हाँ ठीक है हमारा तो काम हो गया ना अभी आगे का आगे वाले देखेंगे. This is a very irresponsible kind of approach which we should learn to end right now, because we are actually cross the peak oil stage and we cannot take the nature for granted anymore. On the other hand, there is the sketch wherein I share that picture. So you take resources from nature and you use those resources the way they are to make your house. When this house dilapidates, it just goes back again to the same nature without creating any wastage, or without deteriorating the ecology or imbalancing the ecosystem. So this is like a circular system, while this is something which is non-linear. Okay, sorry, it's very linear. Like you just take from somewhere and then you end it somewhere else. It doesn't go back to the same place. Then this is a slide which is something that we love sharing with everyone. So when we graduated from college, we all कि चलो cement use करेंगे, cement strong होता है, it has this and that. So all these properties which are very uniform, which is very much true, these properties are advertised and exaggerated to such an extent that the natural materials, in contrast to them, are seen as kacha. So this is pakka and this is kacha. And the reason why people, like the general masses, not just the architects, go for these things is because they're advertised with an engineer standing there saying that I trust this cement. So people want to go with that certain brand of cement. And when we talk of mud, it's just seen as something wherein you can take mud baths, so you can play with it, or you can do something which is not strong or something which cannot be sturdy. So this is a pakka house that we came across during one of our Indira Awas Yojana studies. And this is a kacha house, which according to everyone is not sturdy or not stable. But look at what it is and look at what this is. So pakka versus kacha is a very, I would say, immature way to put things across. This is one of the images wherein a person used to stay who had a lot of, goats. He used to sell those goats during Ramzan or during some, major Muslim event. And that time, the number of goats used to reduce. The other times of the year, his house used to be, full of this livestock. What is interesting about this is we realized how his house Now, this is his house. How his house was so flexible that the minute his goats increased in number, he used to just take out these wall panels made up of karvi or bamboos, and he used to shift them. So the house was made up on a grid of wooden, posts, wooden column grid, on which there were these vertical panels called the partitions or the walls, which he could easily shift and rotate any time of the year as he wanted with no external help. This is something which brought to our notice that this is how community spaces should be, because they need to be flexible in nature, and you cannot just say ki, what I have built, this is how you need to function in the structure. No, you need to know what kind of activities should be taking place over here, and then how do you make the structure flexible? So it's like the form follows function is so rightly said, that you need to know what kind of functions are going to take place and accordingly build your structure. These are a variety of structures that we came across in natural materials throughout the region of Maharashtra, wherein there was so much of diversity. Like you can actually go to a certain region and say, okay, this house belongs here and not somewhere else. All of these typologies that you see are so different that one cannot fit anywhere else. Now, what we have done beyond it, we as in not us, we as in the junior engineers in the villages, for example. Now, these people are like, these are engineers, okay? They are told to make a certain square footage of house or a toilet, and you need to fit all the needs of the person inside this, 280 or 300 square feet. What happens to, when these engineers do it is they are very critical that, okay, I have to, take care of say 200 houses. I will just make a box. I will fit in everything inside. And that is a common prototype, which will be given to all these 200 people. What is not nice is if I was one of those 200 people, I would have, a different set of requirements. And I wouldn't want my house to not have an identity. I do not want my house to look just the same as my neighbors. Just because we are poor does not mean that we have to, fit our needs inside a box which is thoughtlessly designed. So this was like a uniformity that was getting designed by the engineers and given to the people. So this was the house. If you see, this is what we came across in our studies across Maharashtra state, was all the people who stayed in the rural in the rural context. These people are used to staying in houses which are like 2,000 square feet big, 3,000 square feet big. Just to give you an understanding, a Bombay 2 BHK is 700 square feet big. So it's 3 times the house that we stay in Bombay is what these people used to stay in, the villages. And what we are giving them against those houses is you are staying in a kacha house, do not stay in that. We will give you a cement pakka house, which is only 300 square feet. What happened at the end of these projects was the people used to convert these into toilets or lock their, storage inside it and never go and stay in these houses because they were not livable. What I'm talking about, this project is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana project in the rural context. So these are a few examples which I shared right now, which were made by the government for the rural context, saying that this is a house where you have to go and stay because it is made in cement. It's a pakka house. So for this project, what we did was, we told the government, look, this is not how it should be because these people are living in a much better condition than what you are providing them. And the kind of promotion that we are doing for cement and asbestos sheets, for example, is not environmentally friendly. So they said, look, we have to cater to a very large target audience. And, you cannot be so specific ki chalo har ek aadmi ke saath ek ghar design karte baithe. That cannot happen. Neither do we have the funds for that. So we said the kind of architecture that these people are practicing are firstly circular in nature. There is no wastage which is generated. Secondly, they are much climate suitable. They are more suitable towards the functions or the activities that they want to, carry inside the house for their own households. So there were so many benefits that the government agreed to take us on the, the technology panel, wherein they said you are going to work on the green. How do you green the whole Yojana? So this was a study for that. So this is a potter's house, wherein a big chunk of the space, which is highlighted, was for making his pots. There was a veranda wherein the pots were stored. There was a veranda, there was a kiln to bake the pots. There was space for him to make the pots. So his house was planned very differently in comparison to other houses. This was one of the structures that we studied. This had a bit of British influence into it, in fusion with the local architecture. So this is what we documented. Like, it was a whole, a sectional perspective that we made, wherein we, studied the entire construction technology of the entire house. Then this was a very contrasting thing, wherein we studied a similar thing, which was much less complicated, much less sophisticated, wherein the, the material palette also differed a lot. And we also studied how these people have something called as incremental planning. So they build, it starts with just a very small foundation. They make a small core house, then they increase the house, like they take it a level up. The next stage is where, they start extending verandas on each side. They start roofing it slowly, convert it into verandas, then they convert it into rooms. And that is how the whole house gets built over a span of 10 to 12 years. Now, this is a timeline which is even absorbable for the nature or the natural resources that they consume to make the house. It is very important that if you are, taking 10 trees today to build your house, versus you are taking 1 tree every year to build your house, it impacts a lot on the ecology. This was another technology that we studied, wherein a vault kind of roof was made in stones, filled with mud on top. So this was one of the technologies. And the next step for us was, after the documentation, we had to train the junior engineers about our study, like about how we can improve the whole Yojana, where they need not, just make dabbas and give it to everyone. They can do so much better. So the government gave us this exercise to execute 5 projects the way we wanted. We had designed a process that this is the process which needs to be followed. It's not the product that needs to be sold. It is the process which needs to be followed, whether it is us or with anybody else. So this is where we sat with the local Mistri, we sat with the client, and we had made different options of the models where we discussed with them on the models. Is this kind of space enough for you? Is this something that needs to be manipulated? And then after they approved it, we started executing the house with them. So these were the different models that we had made for them. And each model had a different, a monetary aspect associated with it. So we would tell them, if this is the foundation that you choose to build, then this would be the costing. If this is the kind of walls you choose to build, this would be the costing. So they had the, the flexibility to choose what kind of foundation or what kind of walls or what kind of windows they wanted. And this is how it progressed. Once those structures were built, we started trials of plaster. So they were used to making mud mortared, brick houses, but the plaster has to be cement. Why? Because they do not trust the mud enough, or, their skill set enough. So in order to protect the houses, they thought that cement plaster was the only option. So we tried 4 different types of plasters and we made them choose from them if at all they wanted. And most of the people, like out of 5, 4 chose, a third sample of the mud plaster. And then they painted it according to their wills and wishes. So what was interesting in this process was there was an additional step wherein we had documented all the, the waste materials or the old materials which they had already. And we designed the things according to what they had. Some people had bricks, some did not. Some had wood, some did not. Some had Bangalore tiles, some did not. So based on every, it was a very, a process wherein a lot of permutation combination had to happen because the needs and the requirements of everyone was so different. And we allowed them to have these beautiful colors which they love. So this was the Pradhan Mantri project, wherein the lesson for us was how architects are not some people sitting in offices high up there to give orders to the contractors on site. They are more like facilitators, where you need to understand the needs of your client, where you need to understand the needs of the government, and you need to be a facilitator. Like, you have to be a mediator. So you cannot just sit and design and say, this is only my scope of work. Architects have the power to go much beyond and do so much beyond for the society. So this is the project that taught us that. Want me to break for question answers, or should we do it at the end?
Students, do you have anything to ask, or do you want the question answer session to be taken up at the end of the lecture? Yes, students, please respond. Second year students, I guess we can maybe continue and we can take up the question answer session.
So the third project is about a community space, and we are going to show you the process in which we arrived there. This might help you in your project maybe. I do realize that we work in the rural context and yours is more of a semi-urban kind of context, but it's not important that you take directly things from this. It is important that you learn the process in which you have to learn things for your context. I hope I'm not confusing. So I begin with this. So this is the village that we work in, the Hanu. This is Veti Murbad. And Shardul had his thesis on this particular village. So that's his thesis model. After his thesis was done, he wanted to do something beyond. It should not have just ended on, a thesis, a dissertation, or a jury. It had to go beyond because he was working with a cause at hand. What we planned was to take this model at the Gram Panchayat junction. We just kept it there on a stool. We said nothing, we called nobody. And we just started, discussing things amongst ourselves on the model. Slowly, the small children joined in, then the youngsters joined in, and then the adults also joined in. And slowly, they started, locating their houses. Oh, on the model, this is my house, that is my house. And over the time, in a span of just half an hour, what happened was a dialogue was created. It was struck in such a way that they could realize, oh, this is a problematic junction, this needs to be solved. And they started coming up with a lot of problems. And at the same time, there was a discussion wherein a lot of solutions also started pouring in. What was interesting about this was we were again just facilitators. We did not design anything as architects. We did not do anything that an architect is expected to do. All we did was be there, take this model, and strike a dialogue. The next thing we knew was, after this whole session was over, we went back to Pratik's house, and a group of 20 youngsters came to us saying that we want to form a self-help group. Would you help us? And a self-help group, if you might not be knowing, it's called a Bachat Gat, wherein a group of people come together to help each other financially, morally, or in any other terms. Okay. So then we came up with this first self-help group. Now we have 2 of them. With these self-help groups, what we understood from their interactions was that they were able to locate their own problems and they were able to give their own solutions. They did not need anybody else to do that for them. So what was missing is something that got highlighted. What was missing was they did not know the extents of the community aspects which were there. They did not know the farmlands, a zoomed out picture is something which was missing. What we did was we carried out this exercise called the resource mapping, wherein we took a lot of different rangoli powders. We gathered the villagers together and we, made small blocks, which were their so-called houses. So it was a model made on the ground with their roads marked, their farmlands marked, their house and the backyards marked. So all of those things were marked and everyone could see the entire picture. Okay, this is the kind of forest that we have. This is the extent of the farmlands that we have. Based on all of this, the entire village was much more in a better position to, locate themselves. Okay, we are just this much and we can do so much. The next step that we did for them was call a natural farming expert to teach these kids, because they were interested in knowing what we were doing. And we were just working on these natural farming aspect, wherein you don't have to buy fertilizers or spray pesticides to farm, because it's the nature of the seed to produce the next crop. You need not buy the seeds every year from, the companies. So it was such a basic knowledge which tribals anyways had, but it was going on missing because of the GMO seeds. So we said, okay, look, we need to stop this somewhere. So if you're interested, we can call an expert and we can have a dialogue with him. So we called 2 experts over here and they taught them how it would take maybe 2 to 3 years. But it is something that is very much possible to be dependent on natural seeds or grains. This was the next exercise, wherein from a conservationalist, now he's a rice conservationalist, we took 56 species of different native rice seeds and we planted them with the help of the Bachat Cut. This was the produce, and we segregated all the rice separately. We stored them for the next year. The next step we knew was these people were working on individual farms and they had a problem wherein the cattle used to be, berserk. So the cattle was not constrained. So after the rainy season, nobody was able to farm anymore because the cattle used to just come and damage the crop. What these people came together and decided, along with our help, was we told them, look, if you go on fencing individual farms, it is going to take up a lot of time, a lot of resource. Excuse me, I'll just drink water. Yes, so that was one. In comparison to that, if you just club all your farms together and make up one big fence, everyone can club in the manpower, everyone can club in lesser resources and come up with a larger field. So this was the first step of community farming. Now these people had this skill of making bamboo fishing nets, which we thought could be utilized to generate employment for them and eliminate plastic from our architect's life. So we started on making these bamboo scrolls in pouches, wherein we kind of utilize these and these people got income generated out of it. These are the products. Now, the activities which I showed you till now, whether it be community farming or whether it be taking lectures for the community, whether it be making these pouches, all these activities that you're seeing over here is happening in a certain backdrop, which is invisible. So this is happening in the veranda space right now. This is happening in the open. This needs a space which is open to the sun. This is in the open. This needs a shade on top. Now, had there been a structure where we could have accommodated them, this activity could have shifted there. This is something which could have shifted somewhere else. So based on these, what we realized was that there were so many things which we were doing with the community, but we did not have any space to conduct all these things. So this is Pratik's old house, and his father and his family was generous enough to say that we would, want to participate in this community take that you're doing, and we would want to give you this house. You can renovate it the way you see necessary. So we started building this into a workshop, come community space, come a space where the students can come and learn, whether it be wood workshop, whether it be cob, whether it be wattle and daub, or whether it be our clients who want to see what kind of architecture or what kind of principles we carry to, do our projects. So these were a few students who helped us through their volunteer work. They're making cob and wattle and daub. So this is how the students came together to build the structure, to renovate it to the new needs. Now, this is the beauty of any, I would say, tribal structure in this particular village. It's made in a wooden grid-like thing. And it's so easy for anyone to come in and remove something, do something new, make something new. That's the beauty of it. It's so flexible. So these were the different kind of, things students designed sometimes, they executed most of the times. And there are these different spaces which are much more open. Unlike the house, which was divided into smaller rooms, we needed a community space, so it was more open. And we wanted it to showcase the kind of skill set which the village had. So it was more like wherein we wanted to, instill pride in their own technology. So that was one project wherein we worked with the community, and over a span of 3 to 4 years, we realized, okay, a structure is needed, and hence we built it. It wasn't like, chalo, community structure bante hain. No. First, there has to be a need in place. You need to know what all things are happening or going to happen. Based on that, you need to decide if there is a structure required or not. Because as architects, we have stopped questioning the need of doing things. We just take things up as project. ठीक है, project मिला, design करो, दे दो. It's not this linear process. It has to have something where you feel that you are contributing something. It cannot be just a factory kind of process. So this is where we worked with the community based on their requirements and our requirements. We built what we built. The fourth project is also a community project, but much different than what we saw just now. This project is a food processing, a forest food processing center, wherein an NGO had invited us to build the center for them. They wanted to make palash ke patton ka plates, or they wanted to extract oil from the oil seeds, etc. There were very small activities related to the forest. So this is the context, and this is in Jawhar district. Now this particular village who had invited us, Doyapada, had, in spite of getting a lot of threats from the neighboring that we will, come and kill you today because of their inputs. And this is their Vana Samiti, which is a forest committee, which takes care of all the rules and regulations which the village has to follow in order to, keep the forest the way it is or even improve. And these were a few initiatives taken by them to, to dam the water so that it, recharges into the ground. So it was a very active village before we
hello, Vinita ma'am, are you there?
entered this. And this is like, this is how Hello.
Yeah, ma'am, I
Please
guess there
proceed.
is some network problem. We're not
Okay.
able to hear you clearly.
Okay. Let me just check.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Hello.
Hello.
Is it better now?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So, so this community, has these days wherein one member from each family comes to the forest, and they have these nursery kind of place. They take these plants and they plant them where they're supposed to be planted, like these trees. And they also conduct a lot of Ran Bhaji Mahotsav, which is like the wild food forest festival. So this is the backdrop. Like these were the activities the community was anyways doing. The reason why all the projects have these activities shown to you is because before you start designing, it is important to understand who are the people that you're designing for, what are the needs, what is the kind of functions or activities they are involved in as a community. Because without knowing all of this, if you just simply design something, it might be beautiful, it might even function well, but it will not be for the people. It will be just your design, which need not be. It needs to be for the people rather than being it your design. So these were the activities they were anyways doing. And they wanted us to, make a structure for them, which would help. Now, the structure is not the main thing. Okay. This is again a thing which is going to help them do something which they want to do. So the focus is not on architecture. Architecture is just a backdrop for them to conduct the activities which are the foreground. Okay, understand this very critically, because architecture is hyped so much for architects that people just lose the whole purpose of doing it. And this was one of the village houses that we saw. So this village had beautiful skill of weaving bamboos together with so they had these masonry pillars. That was the kind of technology. Masonry pillars, infill walls were bamboo ka woven walls, coated with mud and cow dung plaster. The floor was mud again. The plinth was stone, wood for the roof, and mango tiles on top. Heavy rainfall region, and experiences extreme heat, also extreme cold also. And this is what we proposed. Like we knew that drawings are again not going to work. So we directly make models for all our community projects. In perspective in mind, wherein the mistris should be able to understand the model. The people who are going to build this were the village people. Okay, so it needs to be so simple as a structure that they should be able to execute it without much problems or complexities. All the materials we sought with that they were within the 2-kilometer radius around, so that these people can gather it easily without any much financial burden onto them. So all these materials that you see was collected from here and there nearby. And this is just the simple basic formwork which we needed to construct this structure. So it was just these small bamboos which grew in their backyard, which were used, or some very thin trees which were used as a scaffolding. And since the floor was mud, it was like all these village people who came together to make the mud floor. And we invited a lot of architectural students who volunteered to happily come here and have a dialogue with these with this particular village. What they learned from this was more of an architectural skill, more of the softer side of architecture, while the village people, it was more like, a pride in their construction, wherein people from the city are coming to see what they are doing or want to learn what they are doing. So it was a two-way benefit that we kind of achieved. And this is what the structure looks like from one side. The reason why we did not go for a sloping roof over here was we wanted to install, like the village wanted to install solar panels. And it's not that it's not possible in mango tiles. It's just that it gets a bit complex and it leads to leakages sometimes if not executed well. And considering the skill set that we had, we thought it was not interesting, sorry. It was more needed to go for something which is simpler, which people can execute well. And that's how it ends up today. So this is how it looks. These are the internal spaces where you can see, things are hung from the roof. They are just, bundled up. So all these are palash ka patti. Palash is a tree. And they will be making plates out of these plates and batis. And then there is a oil, extraction machine, which is kept in a corner. So the structure basically gave them the flexibility to put things wherever they wished was the best for that particular activity. And it was a composite of open, semi-open, closed kind of thing. So it was they could use it the way they wanted it to be. Oops. So yes. So this is a poster made by Leewardist for this particular project, wherein we touched upon these aspects of social and cultural, ecological, economical. Solar panels were used. By the way, the electricity generated by the solar panels is used by the center, but the surcharge, which is like the leftover, is utilized by the village as well. And how we use local mud, we use local materials within 2 kilometers radius. We use their technology of bricks with mud mortar and wattle and daub. And yes, so the fees for this project was very interestingly taken. We had told them you can pay us in cash or in kind. And what we received was part cash and part of the fees of our, so this was very interesting. So most of our community projects are very interesting, the fee structure part of it. So, the fifth project is the tribal farmers house. Now this is again a residence, so to say, but it was made basically for the patil of the village. The patil is the head of the village. And this fellow's house looked like a very small shanty.
Hello, Vinita ma'am.
That you see in the center over here. Now that is
Hello.
The house was almost about to collapse.
Yes, your voice, yeah. There was a lag in the presentation and there was a, your voice was breaking. Now it's fine. Continue. Vinita, we cannot hear you.
Jasmine ma'am, can you just connect with her on call or something?
Yeah. I think she can hear us now.
Yeah.
Vinita? Yeah, she left, I guess.
She has some
I just have a word.
issues.
Yes.
Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Not.
So I was. So this project is not a community project per se, but
Ma'am, your screen is not visible. I guess the share screen, you'll have to do it again.
can you see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll try making this one. Yeah. So when he visited random Vibha, he said, "Ki I will help you build a house for you, but you have to deal." And this person had to provide a
This
part of his
network is breaking.
land for the community.
Jasmine ma'am, can you connect with Vinita ma'am
And
on call? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
If she can join maybe from mobile or something, I mean, on both devices, if it is possible for her.
I can hear you, maybe you cannot hear me.
Your voice is not audible, Vinita ma'am.
Now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, I try to speak loudly. So this was the context where in the whole, like this is the village that we are talking about. And the house on the top center that you see is the house that we were going to redo or, make it larger. And this is the kind of architecture which was there around. So it was a ground structure with a loft on top. And very specifically, we saw these timber members, there were these two posts together, and the beams were also two. So this is something that we tried to understand what or why was it happening. And then we realized that it was a seismic detail which the village or the area had developed over times because it was prone to earthquakes. And this is something that we have also seen in places apart from this region, wherein earthquakes are more prominent or more frequent. This is a detail which they incorporate for the seismic activities to be taken care of. That was one aspect. Now, over here, since it was a community that we were working in, it was not a community project, but we spent 4 days of our week on site as masons, as laborers during the daytime. And we used to be teachers to the kids during the evenings. Interestingly, what we are not taught in college, this project taught us something wherein how money is very important to like all the people that we work in today actually. But to the person who actually does not have enough money, what kind of architecture is evolved and how it is evolved. So it did not have a concept ki aisa hona chahiye or vaisa hona chahiye. It was simply like, okay, these are the different kinds of foundations that you can build. These are the different finances which would be associated with it. We took up every element of the house, whether it be wall or roof or windows, doors, or the foundation, and we gave them different alternatives for it. And they chose from it, okay, this is something that we can afford, this is something that we can afford. And how we beautify within that was something in our domain that we had to achieve. Now, these people had a very, very poor skill set, and hence we did not want anything complex to take up. Also, this house was planned in such a way that even if they do not have the funds to complete everything in one go, it should be incremental in nature, something that we had learned from them only. So this is how we had planned the house to be, but we ended up saving a lot of money so that we could construct the entire house in one go. And everything, right from the walls to the wooden members to the joineries, everything was worked in the model. And this is what was given to the masons on site. This is the progress of the house. That's when it went G+1. This is how it was just before the finishing. And that was the completed structure. So this is another project wherein we worked for an individual client, but the client entire family was working as laborers, as skilled masons. We had the entire village give up their skill set towards making of this house. So it was more like a family or a community project rather than an individual house project. This is something that we find missing in places that we work in the urban context today. So being very context specific, we had to see to it that, you be a part of the community that you're working with. In the current project, I think for you, it is again a community project. And due to the pandemic, I do not know how flexible would your journeys or your visits would be to this particular site which is selected for you in Panvel. But I would still want you to understand a different kind of approach wherein you can be more involved in the entire process rather than just being an outsider coming to design for a few weeks and, just finishing it there. There's a difference, and it could be much more enriching as an experience or a process for you if you try out this, different kind of way of working also. And these are a few of our works apart from the community projects. That's it. So I do not know how much I was of help to you all for this particular project, but I do hope that you learn some part of the processes and use it in your project.
Yes, I really think the process and the intensity of the needs at different projects was different. So it was very much context specific, and it was very much pertaining to the need of the community. So that is a message that the students needs to take. And I would request all the students to kindly, come up with whatever, even if it's a silly question, it is important at this point of time. So you can ask any question on any of the projects, please.
I agree. You all are still learning, and no question is a stupid question per se, because it's important.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah, ma'am, I had a question. What is your personal opinion in incorporating new construction materials or like not native materials to community spaces like this?
Okay, so that's a very good question actually, because right now, if you ask me, we work in the rural context, but most of you might not work there. You might be working in the urban context. So what is important to understand is not the natural materials. That is just the superficial part of sustainability. What is important to understand is it required? So the kind of houses or the structures that we make do not have such big spans or big loads wherein RCC is required or steel would be needed. That is the reason we go for natural materials and the local skill set, which is there, which is good enough for the things that we do. But if you want to make Burj Khalifa and then you say कि अरे इसको तो natural materials में बना के रहूंगा, that would be stupid. So the kind of materials you choose depends on what kind of need is there, what kind of requirement is there to make that particular thing. For whom are you making it? Where are you making it? So it has to be very sensitive in your approach. I hope I have answered your question, or did I not get it?
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
How can we design spaces that are inclusive and are welcoming to all of the community?
I didn't get your question. Can you make?
Hello.
What? Can you repeat your question, please?
How can we design spaces that are welcoming to multiple communities that cater to them? Because we are specifically going to do community space. So I was wondering.
Okay, so I think the answer to this question was somewhere hidden in the entire presentation, wherein before you design anything for a particular community or a collage of communities, it is very important for you to understand the communities. Unless you know how they live on a daily basis, on a seasonal basis, what kind of language they speak, the culture they have, how are you going to cater to their needs if you do not even know their needs? So before designing anything, it is of utmost important that you gather enough knowledge and enough data from them. Because anything else, if you give them from your side, it might be good, but it will not be great. Just because it would be good for you, it might not be great for them. So always remember that you as an architect have to design things for the people, not for yourself. You are not going to use it. Somebody else is the end user. It has always be for them. So you have to keep them in mind and design things.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Yes, in the first project, ma'am, you talked about how the villagers thought of some techniques to be like long lost or they are not used in the like the current scenario. So, I wanted to know, how did you modify the like the arches or the other used techniques to like succeed with the design?
That's a very nice question. So, as I said, it was our first project ever, and we had no idea what to do. So we were just like you, and we went into the village. The first step towards this, towards answering your question is, you need to know what they know. So we first went there to understand what was the skill set that they had already. And from there, we knew, okay, this is where they can reach. If they reach there, then we can go beyond. But before everything, you need to know what they have so that you can improve upon it. If you go to a place like the last project that I just described, that the place over there had such a poor skill set that if I decided to do anything which was so-called experimental, it might have just failed badly. And that was not the problem. The problem was it might have just, broken down the morale of the people working there. So it's very important how sensitive you are to, taking them from A position to a better B position. So you need to know first what they have, then improvise.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
I appreciate the work you do for the community space and sticking to your roots while designing a space. But I just want to ask you a question that why don't you guys make the whole process efficient by using softwares for making drawings and stuff? like because everything you showed was hand sketched, and so why do you go for a traditional approach if you have a technology today to make the whole process easier?
That's an interesting question. Firstly, thank you for the appreciation. Uh, it's not that we do not use softwares or we do not know how to use softwares. The projects which we have highlighted in this particular presentation were more or less process-based and more or less related to the communities because of the kind of project that you are going to work on. But the projects which we showed to you over here, for example, like this project or say this project, all of these had CAD drawings, they had models also, they had enough use of softwares which were needed. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि टेक्नोलॉजी को यूज ही नहीं करना है या फिर वो बुरी है, बट जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड इट इज वन ऑफ द डिफरेंट मोड्स ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन, whether it be traditional or something which is technologically advanced. It does not mean it is serving just one purpose, and that is of expressing what your thoughts are onto the person who's going to execute it. So if it is serving that purpose, I don't think any technology is lesser than the other.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. I had another question.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. So, can we merge the older construction materials like mud and stones with the newer construction materials, and yet still it can be friendly to the nature?
Well, it is very need specific. If you think that is what is needed, and if you are being responsible enough to use it, then I think, see, nothing can happen without damaging. Construction is such a field that anything that you do, whether you dig a foundation, it is going to, maybe destroy the house of the moles or the beavers or the ants below. तो ऐसे नहीं होगा, destruction ऐसे नहीं है. It's just that it is in our hands to decide the extent of it. And as I said, materials are not the culprit. It is the architect who is doing it without any sensitivity who's the culprit. It has to be relevant to where you are doing, and it has to be needed to what you are doing. And fusion is definitely possible. In certain places, आप ये नहीं बोल सकते, मतलब you cannot be a purist and say कि नहीं यही use करना है, because that is one extreme of the spectrum. You have to find a balance somewhere जहाँ पर आप कम से कम damage भी करो और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा achieve भी करो. So your goal has to be relevancy.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, any other student from second year, from third year, from final year? Anybody has any question to ask? Please go ahead. Faculties, if you want to share your opinions, please.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah. Ma'am, from where are the construction materials like brought up? Like, does it cost like transportation and all?
So in some projects, it does cost a lot. In most of the community projects, I would say it costed negligible, because जैसे last project में we got all the materials from a 2-kilometer radius, and they were just got in bullock carts, which didn't consume any fuel, so to say. And in some projects, it is from a 10-kilometer radius, तो वहाँ पर कभी-कभी tempos involved हो जाते हैं, tractors involved होते हैं, तो हाँ, transportation के लिए थोड़ा बहुत जाता है. But if you say कि if I'm getting steel from some XYZ place, and that is like say thousands of kilometers away, then that is a carbon footprint that I'm, imbibing in my project, which is not going to be as easy to compensate by just a 10-kilometer radius tempo ride.
Okay, ma'am.
Vinita ma'am, there is one question by our faculty that
Yeah, sure.
can you just elaborate more on the difference in costing between this type of construction and the RCC which we generally used in urban scenario? Can you maybe just elaborate?
Yeah, sure. So there's no standard. I'll just show you the first project. No. So this project that we made, can you see the slide?
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, this project costed us only 450 rupees per square feet. It's a 2,200 square feet house. And it was like the RCC rate today is in the range of 1,200 to 1,500 rupees per square feet. And we were able to achieve this in 450 rupees per square feet. So you cannot say कि natural materials use किए इसीलिए सस्ता हो गया, नहीं. It is cheaper because the entire family gave in the labor. So they saved on to the labor cost. They made their burnt bricks on their own. So that was the cost which was saved. They had old mangrove tiles with them. So we reused them. So that was the cost which was saved. Half of the wood which was utilized in the roof was something which was gotten from their old house, which we utilized again. So there were different factors because of which the cost came down. Now, if I talk about, say, this project, it is again in the range of 800 to 900 rupees per square feet, where nothing was, gotten from outside, but the entire labor which was provided was through sweat equity, which is Shramadhan. तो हर एक घर में से हर एक आदमी अपने फैमिली मेंबर को भेजता था कंस्ट्रक्शन में हेल्प करने. So this was a community structure made by the community. इसलिए labor cost काफी कम हो गई. So there are different reasons why costs come down. Then if I talk of this project I would say costed us 0 rupees because thanks to all the students who volunteered to come here to learn Waterland Daub or Cob, we got to simultaneously build it with their help. So this was a mutual benefit project again. So it costed us nothing. If I talk about this project is again some 450 to 600 rupees per square feet ka range. Because again, here the people built their own houses and it was in such a context wherein the labor was cheap. Most of the materials was reused even in this situation. If I talk of this project, this is somewhere in the range of 2,200 rupees per square feet. This was back in 2014. So you would say that this is almost like twice the RCC, but it also has a lot of detailing and a different design sense to it. If you talk about, say, this project, it is again 2,500 rupees per square feet. This is 3,200 rupees per square feet. So it's not that there is a fixed range in which such constructions happen. It depends on the kind of detailing or the processing of natural materials that you have to do and the kind of client you get. If you are with a client who is very much okay with snakes crawling inside the house and he doesn't need any mosquito proofing, all the details come down, the cost comes down. So it depends on different people that you're building for.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wants to ask anything? Please go ahead.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. So I wanted to ask, at times when we go for context-specific design, students get stuck with the idea of, designing spaces according to their thoughts of how the design is looked upon, rather than forgetting the space which needs to speak for the people using it. So how do you make sure your orientation to design is people-specific, rather than just not favoring to, our thought of what design should be like?
So as I said, the first step is to know the people. You cannot design something for an image of somebody. It has to be for the people who are going to use it. So that becomes your priority. The second is, what is the usage of the space? Is it a community space? Is it an open space, semi-open space, a private space within the community space? So what kind of space are you making? तो रिक्वायरमेंट्स तो होने चाहिए. ऐसे नहीं बोल सकते कि मुझे स्टेज बनाना है, ऑडिटोरियम बनाना है, लेकिन मैं उसको खाली ऐसे छोटा सा 10 by 10 फीट का रूम जैसे बना दूंगा. नो, इट विल नॉट केटर टू द नीड ओनली. तो पहले तो लोग आते हैं because you're building for the people. Secondly, it has to be enough to accommodate the function that you are given to design for. Third comes the structural part of it. ये function कैसे होगा, circulation देखो. फिर उसके बाद में आते हैं aesthetics कि okay, everything, the base is in place. Now my structure is going to stand, okay? But how do I make it prettier? That is the last aspect. How do you make it something which people will like?
Right.
Last aspect.
Right. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi Vinita.
Hello.
This is Tanaya here. I'm one of the faculty member. So it was really wonderful to see your work, and it is very inspiring. I mean, the kind of works you all are doing. So, I would like to know from you. I mean, because the kind of work you're doing is quite unconventional. So what keeps you, I mean, inspiring and motivating in as an architect in practice, and what are the kind of challenges you face in your practical field? So can you talk something about it?
Yeah, I think the motivation is the clients who come to us with a very strong view saying that we don't want to be negligent in the kind of house that we are going to build or the kind of community center that we are going to build. I think because people are taking an initiative, it is our moral duty to support it because we are trained as architects who, we are architects because we want to serve the community. And if there are people who are understanding that this is the kind of need that we have today, like it's no longer a luxury to stay in a concrete house. It's just something which is damaging the climate crisis and everything around. It's not specifically the material, so to say, we just point out to the material, but it's the whole, I think since they are taking a step further, I think that's my motivation of going one step ahead and helping those people who need it. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
I mean, you might be facing a lot of challenges. Yes. So,
yes.
What are the kind of challenges you face in the real life? I mean, in the practice.
So the first challenge that we were very sensitive to earlier was a very shallow kind of challenge that all our sites were like 6 hours away, 4 hours away. And we had to change multiple modes of transport to just reach there and consume a lot of time to travel till that point. But once you reach there, I think the people were so good that we were able to forget all of the exhaustion. The second challenge that we face even today is the kind of acceptance from the Mason community, because they are the ones who knew first ki माती घर आता होत नाही. This is not the kind of construction that happens today. Today concrete works. So why are you doing this? And then they, question you. So if your project is say 3 year long, they might be able to, come on board with you. But if it's just a 6 month long project, then they're still under question. Like, अच्छा इनसे हो पाएगा कि नहीं हो पाएगा. It's also the age, right? Like, you're not old, so to say. So they just see us as inexperienced people and coming and talking something which is like कि ये हो नहीं पाएगा इनसे, फिर भी पता नहीं क्यों आके बोल. तो ऐसे अलग अलग challenges होते हैं. कभी उनकी skill set नहीं अच्छी होती, तो लोग अच्छे अगर मिल जाएं तो they are sincere enough to learn more. If people are not good, then they create troubles in the entire construction process. They even damage the structure. So there are different things, which I think happens even in the conventional architecture. So it's nothing different.
Yes, of course.
Do we have any more questions from student side or
is in faculty wants to add anything to this? Okay, so I'll just sum up for the today. So I guess a very well detailed and wonderful presentation by Vinita ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'll categorize these into two, that is academics and practice. So for academic purpose, definitely students need to understand how do they design keeping context in consideration, which does not only contain the surroundings of it, but beyond it. It is about the people or the community who is going to use it, as ma'am rightly said. The end user is not you and the person who is going to use it. So please consider that. Do not put your own thoughts as main. Understand the needs and the requirements of the people, the community, availability of local resources, how you can maybe recycle, reuse the materials, and design for the community or the local needs of that particular place. So I guess that's what students needs to understand. And if you talk about practice, definitely our final year students are there, and it is a very much inspiring session. If at all they want to after passing out, they want to go for unconventional practice, as you all are doing as a design Jatra form, it will definitely be inspiring for them also to, when they pass out, they might also look out for such option. So, yes, as I said, a very wonderful presentation. So thank you so much, Architect Vinita ma'am and Design Jatra for your guidance to our students, and also sharing your knowledge and your experience throughout your journey up till today. And I would like to thank also our principal, Dr. Sudhya Mahimkar ma'am, the entire faculty team and students for making this session an interactive one and a wonderful one. A special thanks to my semester 4 AD faculty team for all the coordination, and also a graphic team of student council who has helped us to make the poster and all the coordination. So thank you so much, all of you who have helped us directly, indirectly for this conduction of this guest lecture. And I guess we can conclude this session. Tushara ma'am, you can maybe stop recording. Thank you so much, Architect Vinita ma'am, for giving us an opportunity, and we look forward for the session in person, maybe in the college in our future academic calendar. So yeah, we'll definitely be in contact with you.
Yeah.
Tushara ma'am.